Hi everybody, this is Nancy Panuccio from the Emerging Writers Studio, and today we're going to talk about vowels and we're going to talk about sound. Specifically, we'll be discussing the vowel scale. The vowel scale is very much like the music scale, right? Vowels have their own low notes, their mid notes, and their high notes. And this is something that poets are very aware of and very conscious of in crafting their poems. They pay very close attention to individual words and individual sounds within their poems. And good prose writers do this too. So we're going to apply the vowel scale, learn how to apply the vowel scale to individual words in our prose. And we're going to learn how to use vowel sound frequencies to reinforce the emotion, the tone, the imagery, and the meaning of your stories. And by doing that, we'll learn how to get the biggest emotional payoff for you and for your readers. Okay, so let's begin. The poet John Frederick Nims is the man who introduced this idea of the vowel scale, and he said that vowel sounds contain frequencies very similar to music notes, right? And these frequencies cause different responses, different emotional responses in the reader. He said that each of the 15 vowels of the scale has its own character, tone, and color. And I would include there, it also has its own, they have their own shape as well. And he said that like bass, tenor, and alto sounds, they create vibrations in the body. And they register different tones and moods, and they strike various degrees of emotional chords, right? So, for instance, when you play a key on the piano or the guitar, you'll notice that the sound reverberates. There are waves of sound, right? And they hit different emotional registers within us when we listen to music. Okay, the same thing happens in prose. Even if we're not reading it out loud, those vibrations they still happen in the body. They still ignite different emotions in the reader, and they also can correspond to the emotions that your characters are experiencing or the mood of the piece itself. So let's take a look at this vowel scale. We're going to start with the low frequency vowel sounds. These are also known as your bass vowels. And they're inherent in words like boo, bone, book, bought, boy, bow, bar. And here are the middle frequency vowel sounds, or the tenor vowels. Bud, bird, bat, bet, bit. Let's take a look at the high frequency vowel sounds, or your alto vowels. By, bay, bee. Now, if you were to go through this vowel scale from the low to the high or the high to the low, you would actually feel the vibration in your body rising and lowering accordingly. Now, it's no accident that a word like gloom is at the very bottom of the vowel scale, and glee, a word like glee, is at the very top. Right? And I think this came about because before we had language, before we actually had words, we communicated with just sounds, right? And they were just very guttural sounds that came from our most primitive emotions. Well, so that's how language developed. And so those sounds we're just hardwired to respond to these sounds with a certain emotional register. So let's see this in action a little bit. This is something that Milan Kundera said. I reject the very notion of synonym. Each word has its own meaning and is semantically irreplaceable. And this is so true, especially when it comes to the sound of words and the emotions that they carry. So you have words like yell and scream, for example. Okay, now here are two words that essentially mean the same thing. They're synonyms, but they have a different sound, and so they have a different emotional impact. They convey a different emotional tone. So yell is a middle frequency vowel sound, and scream has a higher frequency vowel sound. It has a more kind of violent connotation. We have words like twist and curlicue. Twist wraps a little tightly around the ear, whereas curlicue undulates. It's a different shape, different emotional impact. Zigzag, careen. Okay, zigzag, middle frequency, careen, high frequency. Two words that you can play around with, and they can be interchangeable, but they don't have the same impact because of the sound. One's mid frequency and the other is high frequency. So let's see this in action. I'm going to read to you an excerpt from Elizabeth Bishop's story in the village. A scream. The echo of a scream hangs over that Nova Scotian village. No one hears it. It hangs there forever, a slight stain in those pure blue skies, skies that travelers compare to those of Switzerland, too dark, too blue, so that they seem to keep on darkening a little more around the horizon. Or is it around the rims of the eyes? The color of the cloud of bloom on the elm of the trees, the violet on the fields of oats, something darkening over the woods and waters as well as the sky. Okay, so Elizabeth Bishop is a poet as well as a prose writer. Okay, so she's particularly interested in the sound of words. And this story is about a very young girl who is reacting to her mother's insanity, her mother's madness. And because she's so young, she doesn't have the tools yet to articulate or understand what's happening. So the emotions that she has are embedded in particular word sounds. So let's break this down a little bit. Here are the high frequency word sounds that she has in this particular passage. Words like scream, which is repeated, slight, stain, skies, seam, keep, horizon, eyes, trees, violet, fields, sky. Again, there's a lot of repetition. So, but there's a few of these high frequency sounds that are kind of dispersed throughout the passage. And here are the middle frequency. You have words like Switzerland, hangs, little, rims, elm, waters. So we have those middle frequency in there. And then here are the low frequency sounds. And these are in words like echo, over, no, those, blue, too dark, too blue. Again, a lot of repetition here. So, more, around, dark, around, bloom, oats, cloud, over, woods. Okay, these are the low frequency sounds. And you'll see that the low frequency sounds dominate in this particular passage. Well, why does she do that? Well, the high frequency sounds kind of pierce. They're kind of piercing. And they actually magnify the lower frequency. And the high frequency sounds connote more violent emotions, I would say, or more terror. Right? And then the low frequency sounds are, they convey more of a darker sadness, right? There's more sadness to it. It's ominous, right? So there's an ominous feel to it. So the high frequency vowel sounds are the kind of the terror, those high notes, those kind of violent emotions that she has. Whereas the low frequency conveys more of the darker, the grimmer kind of emotions that are at play in this particular passage, and actually the entire story as a whole. So here's a reading exercise for you. Keeping this vowel scale in mind, read a passage from one of your favorite stories, poems, or novels, or memoirs, and determine which frequency level dominates in each. Then consider how the vowel sounds each writer chose contribute to the story's meaning. So just like we did with the Bishop excerpt, you want to pay attention to those vowel sounds, see which one is dominating, and then ask yourself, how does that correspond to the story's, the emotion of the story, the emotion of the character, or the story's overall meaning, its mood, its tone, and so on. And then here's a writing exercise for you. Take a passage that you're working on, one that has very potent emotional meaning for you or for your character, something that's very emotional for your character, and pay attention to individual words and see if you can fine-tune the vowel sounds so that they hit the emotional register that you intend. So here's where you start to really pay attention to word choice. Okay, think about what Milan Kundera said. Synonym has no place place here, really. You have to really start choosing words, not just going to the thesaurus and finding an original word, but really pay attention to how it corresponds to the mood of the piece itself. Decide whether it should be a low frequency or a high frequency or a mid frequency. Really keep that in mind as you're revising. And then, if you're in the mood to share, post your passage in the comments below. Okay, again, this is Nancy Panuccio from the Emerging Writer Studio, and thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you soon. Bye.